Hey everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers for your CAD preparation. I'm Anupam Mishra and मेरे बारे में बाकी detailed introduction मैं आपको session के end में दूंगा. For now, welcome to the series Daily Word Webs to build the CAD. Etymological based approach से हम यहाँ पे vocabulary सीखने की कोशिश करेंगे and the roots that we'll be taking up today will be noct, nox and nict, right? So let's start. Let's see, the episode flow of this is going to be very simple. In the next part, we'll move on to your root info, where I'll tell you about the meaning of the roots and the origin language from which they have been derived. उसके बाद we'll move on to the word web. The word web is the part जहाँ पे हम लोग will look at some words which derive their meaning from these roots. We'll learn of them, learn those words etymologically. After which we'll look at the same words as part of sentences, right? Just so that you're able to internalize your learnings. Finally, you'll give a very short test and then we'll close with a summary. Alright guys, so let's start with the roots. The roots that we have at hand today are noct, nox and nict. Out of these three roots, इनमें से पहले जो दो आपके root हैं, these first two roots belong to the Latin language, have been taken from the Latin language, and the third root has a Greek origin. Okay, and however, all three of them have the same meaning, which is night. Okay, and then also sometimes used in the context of darkness. So I'm not sure if you noticed, अगर आपने notice किया होगा that the last two sessions that we studied, in the last two sessions, the roots that we discussed were related to the idea of light, right? And then now we are moving on to the idea of darkness here. I'll tell you what. See, the theme that we are following in terms of selecting these roots, apart from obviously हम लोग roots वो pick करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं जिनका frequency आपको ज़्यादा मिलेगा, जिनसे related roots, जिनसे related words का frequency will be higher in the English language. That's certainly a criteria. But apart from that, we've also tried to maintain another logic here, and the logic is that of dichotomy, right? Dichotomy का मतलब होता है basically dichotomy comes from the words dikho, which is a Greek root for two, right? And toma, 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 which is a Greek for like cutting something apart, right? किसी चीज को अलग कर देना, कोई चीज को दो भाग में और multiple parts में divide कर देना. So dichotomy is basically dividing anything into two parts will be considered a dichotomous action, right? So whenever you talk about dichotomies, you're essentially referring to a group of things. कोई भी दो चीजों का group जो कि एकदम opposite हो. Let's say if A and B are totally opposite to each other, then they can be considered dichotomous, right? In a sense. And then so it refers to the contrast and division between things which are completely opposite. So and then you can notice that that's the theme that we have been taking up, right? यही theme हम लोग लेके चल रहे हैं. For example, अभी इसके पहले वाले session में we talked about light, and now we are moving on to darkness. And similarly, आने वाले sessions में we will look into other dichotomies such as life and death, etc., and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's how we go about things to keep things interesting. And so that's about the roots, guys. देखो यहाँ पे ही हमने एक word यहाँ पे सीख लिया. By the way, another similar root that relates to noct, nox, and nict is umbra, and umbra stands for shadow. By the way, umbra is the root that we'll study in the next episode. ये आपका episode number 4 में हम लोग इसको study करेंगे, ठीक है? So yeah, let's start then. Let's start with the first word, which is equinox. Now that's an interesting term, and it derives from two roots. In fact, एक तो आपका nox है. Nox comes from night. Nox, as we discussed, it's Latin for night, and equi comes from another Latin root which goes something like aequi, right? Which stands for equal. Okay, which stands for equal. So literally अगर literally देखा जाए तो इस शब्द का मतलब होगा equal nights, right? But that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Well, consider this, that equinox is basically a term that stands for a day when the length of night and day are the same everywhere on earth, right? So see, I'll try to explain. So during summers you must have noticed that how the days are usually longer than the nights, right? And just the other way around in winters, when the days are shorter than the night. I'm talking about the time between sunrise and sunset, right? So usually the time between sunrise and sunset in case of summers will be more than 12 hours, and in case of winters will be less than 12 hours, right? आपकी शाम जल्दी हो जाती है ठंडी के सीजन में, सर्दियों में. So, however, this is the case for most for the summer and the winter months. But twice a year, साल में दो बार, there comes a time when the duration of the day is the same as the duration of nights, right? And these days actually, they are very specific dates, by the way. The first day I think is 21st March, okay, 21st March, and the second day is 23rd of September. Okay, so these days would be considered as equinoxes. Okay, and yeah, so that's what equinox stands for. By the way, a simple exercise for you. You know, there's just Google after the session. Google this, expression, land of midnight, the land of the midnight sun. Quite interesting. Norway is the country that is known as the land of midnight sun, because in some places of Norway, इस देश के कुछ जगहों में, for certain period of time, for certain number of months, the sun does not go beyond the horizon, right? It's constantly like हमेशा दिन रहेगा आपका, and then for certain periods of, for certain other months of the year, the sun does not rise from the horizon. Like it's a, I think it's constantly dark, right? So there's in fact a movie by Al Pacino, which is set in that backdrop. I think it's called Insomnia or something. So yeah, so that's interesting, right? So anyhow, why is that? वो वैसा क्यों होता है? I'll not get into the geography of it, because we want to stick. We want to ensure that this is just a vocabulary session. Okay, so yeah, but I'll leave you with something interesting here to check. Okay, moving on to the next term that we have at hand here is nocturnal. Nocturnal, guys, you must have, if you've watched at any point of time, you must have watched, I'm sure, these channels such as Discovery, National Geographic, वहाँ पे है ना, Animal Planet, etc. So you must have noticed that, they often talk about animals such as owls, or let's say leopards, which are active, and which hunt their prey during the night, right? And then hence they will be considered as nocturnal animals, right? As opposed to someone who might be, as opposed to creatures who might be who might follow a diurnal routine. Now, diurnal is basically, for example, we humans are diurnal. We carry out most of our activities during the day, right? In general, not everyone, of course. So most of we have a diurnal pattern, right? Of going about our routine. So anything that occurs or happens during the night. Now these terms don't always have to refer to creatures or animals, or they can also refer to activities. Certain activities which are always carried out at night can be considered as nocturnal activities. So ये हमेशा ये कोई प्राणियों की बात करे, ये शब्द ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है, ठीक है? So something that is active or occurs at night is nocturnal in nature, and vice versa, something that occurs or is active in the daytime is diurnal in nature. Okay. All right. Next term that we have here is noctambulist. Now, noctambulist, guys, the first part of it obviously derives from noct, which stands for night. There are the other part of the word, which is ambulist, derives from one, ambulare, ambulare, which is I think the Latin. Yeah, ambular is the Latin for the expression to walk. It means to walk, right? Noctambulist, and ist is basically just a suffix used to denote the person who's carrying out that activity, right? So, for example, in case of psychology, which is the study of the human mind, or psychology, or the psyche, a psychologist. Like if you add ist to psychologist, it becomes, well, the person who practices psychology, right? So that will be a psychologist, someone who helps people with the disorders of the mind, right? So ist is basically a suffix that denotes, that refers to the person who's involved in that activity. Anyhow, to the practitioner, basically, right? It's not always a practitioner in formal terms, because psychologist में आपका practitioner fit होगा, noctambulist में कोई practice नहीं करता जानबूझ के noctambulism, right? So noctambulist is simply a person. Well, noct is for night, ambular is for walk. So noctambulist would be a person who walks at night, or maybe who walks in their sleep. Okay. There's another term for this, and मैं उसको भी यहाँ पे note करता हूँ आपके लिए. Another term for this is somnambulist. SOMNAMBULIST. B-U-L-I-S-T. Now, somnambulist derives from the root somni, which refers to sleep. Okay, which refers to sleep. So someone who walks during while being asleep would be a somnambulist. Okay, do note कि although these two terms noctambulist and somnambulist are quite often used interchangeably, एक की जगह दूसरा आसानी से यूज किया जा सकता है, but their meaning is not always the same. Like for to demonstrate, let's say अगर मैं इसमें Venn diagram बनाऊं, so a noctambulist वाले केस में, like someone who sleepwalks, let's say this is the noctambulist circle and this is the somnambulist circle. Someone who sleepwalks will fall in both these categories. Like you can use both of these terms for someone who sleepwalks. However, there might be people like noctambulist is also sometimes used to refer to people who are active at night or maybe who are just roaming around at night, right? So वो हमेशा sleepwalk होना जरूरी नहीं है. In case of somnambulism, and then similarly for someone who's a somnambulist, it's not necessary that they always sleepwalk in night. Maybe they fell asleep during the day and they started sleepwalking, right? So that will be this area. Anyhow, but I don't think इतना nuance कोई draw करता है यहाँ पे, so you can generally use them interchangeably. So that's about noctambulist and somnambulist. Let's come to the next set of next word, which is nyctophobia. Nyctophobia now, guys, stands for nycto is the Greek root for night, and phobia comes from another Greek root, which is Phobos, phobos, which stands for fear, right? So nyctophobia is a person who has an irrational and abnormal fear of night or darkness. Please don't confuse nyctophobia with the normal fear of darkness. People have this, for example, and ये काफी common tendency है. When someone has this tendency to keep things in order, people all generally very easily start classifying them as someone with OCD. Now, OCD is a very serious term, guys, and similarly nyctophobia would be a very serious term. Just because a child is afraid of dark doesn't mean that you can call the person the kid nyctophobic, right? So be like, these are extreme cases, where something a fear which debilitates you, which keeps you from carrying out your routine activities. मतलब इतना ज़्यादा डर है कि आप जो regular चीज़ है वो भी नहीं कर पाते हैं. So it's not just a normal fear, right? So there's a difference of degree here in a general fear of darkness and in in case of nyctophobia, right? So just a differentiation, that's just a difference that you should know, I believe. Anyhow, so nyctophobia आपका हो गया. Coming to noctilucent. आपको याद होगा, there was this term that we went through, bioluminescence, right? मैं पूरा नहीं लिख रहा. Bioluminescence, and we talked about, we took the example of that scene from Life of Pi, where there are these planktons probably, or these organisms in the sea which are emitting light, and it makes for a really beautiful scene, right? When Pi looks into the ocean, it's almost like a very surreal reflection of all the stars. So that phenomena is called bioluminescence. However, those organisms, a word that can be used to describe those organisms would be noctilucent. Why? Because nocti comes from night and lucent comes from the root luc, which stands for light, as we have already studied in the earlier sessions, right? So noctilucent would be these anything that shines or glows or emits light at night. However, ये term generally बहुत ही narrow context में use होता है. It is used generally to refer to clouds, and if you have ever gone for a high altitude trek पे अगर आप कभी गए होंगे, you must have noticed that during sunset, the clouds generally at very high altitude during sunset, they seem to be they seem to have a kind of a shiny texture to them, right? They seem to be थोड़े से मतलब शाम के टाइम पे भी वो काफी शाइन कर रहे होते हैं, and that the reason is mainly because due to the curvature of the earth, although the sunlight is not able to reach the grounds here, but it is still able to reach the clouds, and hence it is getting reflected from the clouds, and then that which accounts for the shine that they are able to emit, right? So these clouds are generally considered as noctilucent in nature. Okay, so that's where this term is generally used. So yeah, so I think that's about any. Oh, by the way, a couple of other interesting words that can be derived from these roots. For example, एक और word है हमारे पास, like from ambulaire, another word that we can. You must have heard of ambulance, right? Ambulance. Now, ambulance is basically a vehicle that is used to take people who are not capable of moving, right? Either maybe because they have met an accident or maybe because they have a condition. So that's when you use an ambulance, right? So someone to help someone who's not able to walk. So you can see how that relates here. Another term that can come from ambulance is perambulate. Perambulate. Now, this, in case of perambulate, the part per does not derive from what we discussed, the per that we discussed in one of the earlier sessions. You know, the per that we discussed in one of the earlier sessions was stood for through. THROUGH. I'm making such a mess on this slide. You better watch this live, otherwise अगर आप इसका snap लेके देखेंगे तो it'll be very difficult, I'm sure. But this per does not derive from this through. Okay, this per derives rather from peri, which stands for the surrounding of something, like perimeter, right? So and hence perambulate. Ambulate comes from to walk, means to walk, and per means peri. That means to perambulate means to walk around something. किसी चीज के गोल गोल घूमना, right? So that's what perambulate would stand for. So yeah, so I guess that's about it so far as today's word web is concerned. Let's very quickly go through some sentences now. The first word, the spring equinox has just passed. They face 6 months of unrelenting night. Right now, this has been taken from a very good book, by the way, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Duo. Right. So yeah. They seem to be the person seems to be talking about the. It seems like they live in a country that is similar to Norway, जहाँ पे where for a long period of time the sun doesn't set, and for a long period of time again the sun doesn't rise. See, and usually the equinoxes will basically be the points when this transition happens, right? So yeah, you can understand that here. A nocturnal butterfly fluttered about her head while the lights were on, right? So yeah, so maybe we're talking about a person who's standing somewhere, and then a nocturnal butterfly flutters about that person's head. So fair enough. Again, taken from a really great book. By the way, this is a book for which this author won a Nobel. 100 Years of Solitude. Next, sleepwalking or night wandering, also known by its Latin name of noctambulism, is a well-known phenomenon, right? So yes, taken from this, yeah, this another book, I guess. Then nyctophobia, with nyctophobia, symptoms may be triggered by being in the dark or even thinking about situations where you would find yourself in the dark. So we have just simply taken this from healthline.com. The reason for nocturnalism in crowds growing more common and conspicuous could be the changing climate, right? So taken from Sunday Times. So that's about the word usage of these words that we learned here, guys. Okay. Finally, the exercise, guys. I'm going to start, putting up, forms where you can answer these exercises. जहाँ पे आप ये exercises को आप you can answer it in a interface like Google Forms or maybe Microsoft Forms. मैं उसके links आप provide करने लग जाऊँगा यहाँ पे. So you can provide your answers to these. Basically, you need to find the right word for these blanks out of these 5, and every word is being used only once. Okay, so something you should know. So answer this and then test your learning. Okay, guys, so in the summary, these are the roots that we learned primarily, and on a secondary note, we also went through the roots of peri, equi, and ambulare. Obviously, we'll go into the details of these roots in upcoming sessions. These are the words that we learned on a primary level, and we also discussed the following words in the session, right? So yeah. Okay, guys, so finally about myself, I'm Anupam Mishra and I'm Lucknow alumnus. These are my areas of work and these are the brands that I've worked with in the past. I have also worked as an educator in the past with an academy, and I was recognized by the Johnny Ive Award and considered arguably as the best VRC educator that they had. And well, these are my CAT credentials, and we are a growing channel right now at this moment, and we need all the support that we can get. If you find our content, अगर आपको हमारा content, हमारा delivery, ये सब चीज़ें आपको अच्छी लग रही हैं, तो definitely इस वीडियो को share करें with all those people, with all the learners and students जिनको ये helpful हो सकता है, who might find this interesting, and do consider subscribing to the channel and liking the videos. So that like it might seem like a very small thing on your part, but it goes a long way. It plays a major role when it comes to an upcoming brand like Sluggers. So yeah, so that's about it, guys. I'll see you in the next session.